You can see that these are broad topics brought into one section. I will give them 10 minutes. By the time you have 2 minutes to the time, they will give you a signal. Nobody should exceed 10 minutes. But I will commence with Lanesik Kukrubo SAN, whom I have watched, his practice style. We fought it out those days. The once I warned him, he went on appeal, and further went on appeal up to the Supreme Court, and many more. He has an opposite. I won't go further in that. But he has shown so much zeal in practice. And that is why he is here. And like I said before, he didn't just start when he became 10. He started when he was a junior lawyer. Let us hear from him. Listen to him, and let's see what we can get. 10 minutes.
Thank you, my lord. My lord, with your kind permission, I'd like to use this.
Please.
Thank you. So, my lord, I first of all want to thank you for telling us the secrets to how you confront us with authorities in court. We now know. Distinguished colleagues.
Just a minute. Let me appoint a timekeeper. No, I want someone so that once it is time, you move. Asimabo, you will be a timekeeper. Know when he's starting. Once it is 2 minutes to the time, you can notify him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank the YLF Port Harcourt branch for the MBA, the YLF MBA Port Harcourt branch for the privilege of addressing you today and having this short discussion, 10 minutes or less than 10 minutes talk on the applications and implications of legal tech in law firms in Nigeria. And forgive me, I'm not one for too much protocols, so all protocols duly established, I stand on all of them. So what is legal tech? It's important as young lawyers that you have the basic knowledge of what legal tech is. I've made a short presentation, set of slides in the course of preparing for this talk. And it refers to any software, technologically based, of course, that aids you in your practice. So as we're all seated here right now, whether we like it or not, from the handheld devices that you have, from the, iPhones, the iPods, the laptops that you have, you already have access to the possibility of using all kinds of legal tech to aid you in your practice. From my experience, even while sitting down here listening to the keynote address and the various Google messages, I found myself even walking, and I'll come to how that impacts on your life as a legal practitioner, simply because I had my handheld devices and I have to respond to all kinds of mails. Now, I believe I can use this. Yeah. So that's the definition, or at least one way of explaining it. I'm sure there are several other explanations. It's important for us to have a brief history of legal tech in Nigeria, just to get the foundation of what we're talking about. We're all aware of emails, and very few of us remember when emails became a thing. And this goes as far back as 1971. Even at that time, it wasn't essentially commercially available, if you will, to the general public. It was commonly used under what we call LAN, local area networks, or wide area networks, of entities like the Shells of this world and NNPC. These were the corporations, the big corporations that had the need for that kind of mode of interactions among staff. So it wasn't something that was generally available to all of us, particularly law firms. And of course, this is from a purely Nigerian perspective. We're not going to talk about what was going on in the UK and other parts of the West at the time. And then gradually, I don't know how many of you recall something called CompuLaw. CompuLaw was some CD-ROM that was made available by a lawyer, Mr. Oladipo Bali. And what it sought to do was to give you access in digitized form to judicial pronouncements of the various courts across the land, particularly the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. And I recall as a young lawyer, I used to purchase CompuLaw because it looked neat and tidy rather than having those bulky all Nigerian law reports or NWLRs. But it had a problem because you have to wait for a while for it to be updated, and there was always a convoluted process for you to get the recent authority. So it was always easier to go down the road just behind the High Court and just purchase the law report that you want. So that was an issue with that process, but it was technologically driven. Now it wasn't until the early 2000s that law firms across the country started actually availing themselves of legal tech at a very base level. You know, emails that allow you to communicate. We had something called a facsimile that allowed you transfer information digitally. And you stay in Port Harcourt, you receive a fax from Lagos or Abuja. If you wanted an authority that somebody you knew was well equipped had, you waited for them to fax it to you. You know, that was, they had to photocopy it and then they put it through their system, and then you wait at one point to receive it. It was a bit tedious, but at that time, guess what? It was considered the thing. But it wasn't, we were still not there. And then we now had what I'm sure a lot of us here are familiar with, Law Pavilion. Law Pavilion, I think, broke several crowns. Interestingly, and I'm sure in one of the panels they will be talking about legal entrepreneur, if not even owned by a lawyer. I understand Mr. Olugasa, Okpe Olugasa is an engineer. And he set up Law Pavilion, which is now more or less the rave of the moment, and we've used it in several forms. It has reduced the load that most of us have in the offices. Many law firms can brag that they don't have hard copies of Nigeria weekly law reports, because if you're not using Law Pavilion, you're using probably the